supertalk.fm. We're also streaming from that SuperTalk Mississippi app and always on your local SuperTalk Mississippi radio station. But don't forget, you can watch us. It's as easy on your computer or your mobile device. Just head on over to SuperTalk TV. And here's a good headline. The Mississippi Blues Trail was recognized by Southern Living in its 2025 Southern Bucket List. And joining us today are two gentlemen that helped make that list possible. We got Scott and Jim. So welcome, guys.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having us. Hello.
And congratulations to you both. I'm going to start with Scott. How did it feel? Did you guys hear that the Southern Living had picked the Mississippi Blues Trail as part of its 2025 Southern Bucket List, or did you hear through the grapevine like everybody else?
I'd say, this is Scott Barretta. I'd say that I found out, I guess like everybody else, I probably saw it on social media. Jim and I do the research and writing for the markers, and don't really get too much messaging from the Visit Mississippi office about the various accolades that the trail gets. So I'd say that we're kind of used to the trail since its inception in 2006. It's gotten a tremendous amount of great media attention.
Well, it's because of the good work you guys are doing and putting out there and people's sort of fascination with the blues and its connection to Mississippi and the South. So, Jim, back in 2006, I'm sure it probably started before then. What inspired this idea of even starting a blues trail or having these blues markers here in Mississippi?
Well, from the state's point of view, I think the economy was one thing, the economy of the tourism that it would attract, because people were already coming from Belgium, Norway, California, New York, and everywhere to Mississippi, looking for historic sites, even taking pictures of the highway signs like 49 and 61. And the realization that we had something special that would attract people was one reason for the markers. And another, of course, was to honor a great cultural and musical tradition that really hadn't gotten its due, especially here in its home state. And it's been a pleasure to be able to put these markers up and to see the people come. They really did come, and they're still coming.
So, Scott, you and Jim both helped research for this. How are you guys sort of picked or found or, I guess, voluntold? I'm not sure sometimes how that kind of happens, that this would kind of be your next gig, because it sounds like a fun one.
Oh, it's fun. Yeah, well, it's it's a lot longer than we presumed it to be. When we started working on the Blues Trail back in 2006, it was actually a grant for 9 markers that were in five counties across the Delta or something like that. So it was actually more or less of a trail that you could start in Tunica or something like that and visit all 9 markers. But then in 2007, I believe, the state decided that there would be 120 markers. And at that point, we drew upon the Blues Hall of Fame. And then I guess there was kind of a pragmatic consideration about trying to spread the markers across the state, which wasn't a problem. People think about the blues as being centered in the Delta, but there's all kinds of great blues artists and blues traditions across the state.
Jim, to go from 9 to 120 is a really big jump, but that had to be some kind of validation that your and Scott's work was resonating with people and generating this tourism, even if it was in-state tourism. Was there ever like this heavy burden of either we won't find enough to do all 120, or how do we limit it to 120?
Well, the problem hasn't been how to limit it to 120, but how to do more, because so many of the communities wanted to be a part of it. That was one of the great things about doing this project, was that once it got started, lots of towns and counties wanted to be a part of it, even though many of them didn't have much of an established blues history or didn't know that they did. And so doing the research for that and find out that there's blues almost everywhere in the state, or there has been at some point, that's been real gratifying. And it is dependent on the support of the communities, though. The communities have to put something into each marker to maintain them. and to get them installed. So we depend on them too, and it's been great to get to know a lot of the people involved in that.
I know research like this, Jim, goes a lot of rabbit holes. I mean, I think you start with one thing and then you find where it leads, and then, you get deeper and deeper and sort of see the connecting pieces. So where did you start? Do y'all just start, or did you guys start with just the, most notable bluesmen of our history and see where it leads, or did y'all have other tactics that you used to get you down to things that people may not recognize Mississippi being connected to?
Well, when we started off, there were, as I said, we went to the Blues Hall of Fame, which is a respected organization, and we took, I don't know how many names from there, Jim, 30 or 40 or something like that. I mean, you didn't really have to debate whether we were going to address Muddy Waters or Howlin' Wolf or Bo Diddley or, many other people. But then it had a lot to do with some of our funding sources also. We got money from the Humanities Organization in Washington, D.C., and they wanted us to start talking about things like the river or highways or radio. But, now we have over 120 was what was decided in 2007, but now we have 220 or something like that. I'm not sure.
And is that in? Have we capped it, or do you guys see that there's more potential to add more blues markers as, interesting things get discovered, or communities rally around wanting one?
Well, yeah, we've got more coming. There's several in the works right now, and there's still a pretty long list of others we'd like to do. And, of course, even outside of Mississippi, a lot of organizations have gotten involved in this. We have markers in Wisconsin and Maine, California, Norway, all over the world, really. And so if they have a connection to Mississippi blues, and there's such worldwide appreciation of the blues, that there is some trace of Mississippi here and there everywhere.
So what was the very first marker, Scott?
It was in Holly Ridge at the burial site of Charlie Patton, who somebody arrived at my house and the dogs are going crazy. Charlie Patton, who's regarded as the father of the Delta Blues. That was in Holly Ridge, Mississippi, outside of Leland. And Governor Barber was there, and there was a plane load of European journalists who the state brought over. So that really contributed to us getting a lot of attention around the world. But also it became an assignment that a lot of travel writers really were probably asking their editors for. It's kind of a cool thing to come to Mississippi and write about the blues.
If we could only get those jobs, Scott, right?
Yeah, that's right.
To travel your own blues trail and sort of write about them. But, Jim, what was the last or the latest marker? What was number 220?
I think the latest one was Mr. Sip, wasn't it?
Mr. Sip, yeah, Mr. Sip. And Macomb, and the next one, I believe, is going to be Jesse Robinson in Jackson, and that's going to be Jesse is being honored in the St. Patty's Day Parade, and I think it's in tandem with that. I don't have the exact information, but we still have a number of markers, in the planning, and there was kind of a lull a couple of years ago, but then it started expanding again. So it's pretty remarkable, and it's been a wonderful job.
Scott, what's your favorite marker?
My favorite marker, gosh. We have a marker over at Dockery Plantation, which is where Charlie Patton lived and Howlin' Wolf and Pop Staples played. And one of the reasons I really like that is because the buildings from 1900 or so are still there. Otherwise, a lot of the markers are in locations where there's nothing really to see that points to where these people lived and played. But there you can, I don't know if you can exactly imagine it, but you can still see the porch where Charlie Patton and other musicians played regularly. There were accounts of that. So that's pretty cool. It's just a really beautiful site. But if you asked me tomorrow, I'd say something else.
Well, I'm going to ask you to stick with us, and we can keep talking about the Mississippi Blues Trail with Scott and Jim coming up next here. and your local SuperTalk Mississippi radio station. And don't forget, you can watch us. We are on your computer, your mobile device. Just head on over to SuperTalk TV, where we are continuing our conversation with the researchers behind the Mississippi Blues Trail. There's now 220 markers, not only statewide, but nationally and internationally. And Scott and Jim are behind the research that helped make those markers happen. So, Jim, I hope you were thinking over the break. I asked Scott what his favorite of the 220 were. It's your turn. What is your favorite of the blues markers if you had to pick one?
I don't know if I can pick one. I mean, I was glad to be able to work on the markers of some of my favorite artists like Charlie Patton and Magic Sam in Grenada and Otis Rush in Philadelphia. But I think one of the most exciting research moments for me have been trying to dig up the histories of towns outside the Delta and Jackson that may not have been known for blues, but we found that there was a pretty deep blues tradition in a lot of places, like along the Gulf Coast and even places like Amory, where there's almost no written information about the history of blues in Amory. So we had to find local sources. You know, I talked to a lot of local musicians and residents who just remembered things about when the blues was there and where it was, but you can't find that in any books, and that's one of the things we're proud of about the Blues Trail is that we've dug up a lot of new information that's not in Wikipedia and not in any books.
Speaking of book, though, 220, that's 220 pages. That's a good book. Has there been a collection of all the markers in like one spot if people wanted to sort of not necessarily read it? I don't know if there's a thread that goes through them all in terms of a timeline, but I'm sure that's another project you guys could do. But is there like a way that people can sort of see them all together? Scott or Jim?
Well, they're all on the website at msbluestrail.org. You can read all the text there, but we've talked about the blues, about doing a book ever since the beginning. Maybe two books, one big book with all the information and one shorter guidebook. So any publishers out there who want to contact us, we're interested.
I think you need a coffee table book, too, because there's a lot of great photographs, old and new, that come with these markers. And I think a good coffee table to sort of flip through would be really good use of your information. So there, if a publisher's listening, they need a coffee table style book for the Mississippi Blues Trail. Now, at 220, they're always an unveiling, and it's always a big opportunity to bring a little exposure to the places that are getting the new trail markers. Have you guys gotten to go to the majority of them? I'm sure maybe the international ones are a little bit tougher, but have you visited, for the most part, all 220 markers?
No,
I haven't. I've been to a few.
Jim lives in Kansas.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
I don't know how many I've been to. Actually, I don't know, 10 years ago, Living Blues magazine, which Jim and I were both editors of that magazine, which is now at the University of Mississippi, we did a special issue, and I think maybe we covered 150. And I traveled around the state with photographer Bill Stieber, and I don't know how many we visited at that point. I know that there's some super fans who've been to all of them, but some of them are pretty far out of the way, in the south central Mississippi. I live over in the Delta, so I've seen probably all the ones in the Delta and North Mississippi, but there's some remaining ones in the state I haven't seen yet.
So, Jim,
and then we've got them in what states do we have them in? We've got in Liverpool and in Norway, in France. So, we'd be happy if the states
maybe on your future book tour that you guys will go on, thanks to good things and a publisher reaching out, you will get to go to all 220 markers. I'm putting that out there.
That sounds like a plan.
Putting that out there for you. Jim, for you not being born and raised in Mississippi, how did you get connected to this project? Was it a love of music, history that maybe connected you to it, or just your love of research? How did you find yourself at the very beginning with the first 9?
Well, actually, I was raised in Biloxi, and I lived in Oxford, Marigold, and Clarksdale over the years, although I'm in Kansas City now. But I got interested in blues when I went to to college in Chicago at Northwestern and realized that a lot of the music I'd been listening to was grounded in the music of Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and Otis Rush and Freddie King. And a lot of those people were in Chicago, or I could see them in Chicago at least. And that's what really got me into it. And then I lived in Chicago for a long time when the Living Blues magazine was getting started. And then we transferred the magazine to Ole Miss, and then I later moved to Mississippi and had a record store in Clarksdale.
Oh, that's cool. Do you miss our winters, Jim?
Yes, I do. It's like 13 degrees here this morning, so I'm always wanting to be back south, especially when the winter comes.
So we won't complain about our 34 and 35 degree mornings and our late mid-50s afternoons. You don't want to hear that, do you?
It still seemed like it was cold down there, though.
Yeah. Scott, how did you find yourself into the love of the blues so much that you would dedicate so much time? Obviously, it's an opportunity, it's a gig to do at that point. But how did you find your path to loving the blues so much?
Well, I grew up near Washington, D.C., and I think the first time I saw the blues live was at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival that was held down on the mall. And then I just started going out to clubs and festivals, and then later on began traveling to Mississippi and Chicago and New Orleans. And I ended up taking a job as the editor of Living Blues magazine at the University of Mississippi in 1999, so 25 years ago. So I came at a time when there was a lot more talk about giving attention to the blues in Mississippi. A number of us who were involved, I guess you could say, in the nonprofit began talking about how we could try to promote the blues. And then in 2003, the United States Senate and the governor of Mississippi and some large music corporations and PBS started pushing something called the Year of the Blues. And there was a film series by overseen by Martin Scorsese that brought a lot of attention to it. So I came to Mississippi at a time when there was a much bigger push for cultural tourism, notably for the blues. So I was very fortunate, I feel like, that, sort of falling into that. And then I got to work on the B.B. King Museum when it started up around 2003 or so.
Jim, as a former record... go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I just was going to say we should give credit to Senator John Horn and some of the people who helped push this through on the governmental level, and also Alan Hammonds and Associates and Wanda Clark in Greenwood, who have really made the design what it is. A lot of other states have contacted us to ask how we do the markers, who does the design, how do you get them done, and so we've kind of provided a model for other states.
You mentioned 221 is coming out soon. Do we have a ish when it's coming out? Is it at 2025? Is it soon, mid-year? Do we know?
Well, I think it's going to be in tandem with the St. Paddy's Day Festival.
So that's March, yeah.
Which is in March. I don't think we have any others that are coming up too soon, but we have a number scheduled for this year.
Well, that's exciting, something for us to look forward to. Jim, as a former record store owner, are you happy to see vinyl's coming back? It's making a comeback with the kids?
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. I was sad to see it go, and I'm glad to see it come back. I especially like the LP format because, I'm speaking for Scott, too. I'm sure that we learned a lot of our information from reading the liner notes on the back of the albums, and that's harder to do on CDs unless they have an extended booklet inside. And but I love the sound of records too, 78s, 45s, LPs, anything.
Well, I love it, and I appreciate both of your time, all the work you guys have done on the Blues Trail. Congratulations for being recognized by Southern Living as one of the 2025 Southern bucket list of things to do, and that's to follow the Mississippi Blues Trail. And all that information, you guys, is it over at msbluestrail.org?
Yeah.
Yep. All righty. Well, I appreciate you guys' time.
Well, thank you for devoting so much time to us. Thank you.
All righty, you guys stick with us. We got more good for you coming up next.